Hello, I'm Pylon John, and welcome back to the big city of Montmaquis. We've got our old town, the Notre-Dame des Martyrs district, over here. It's got about 16,000 pretty well-to-do residents, and it's full of mixed-use buildings and medium-density housing. So what our demand bars show is that we need both low-density and high-density housing options. Although that medium density demand will creep back up as we go along. But taking a look at our population statistics, and I'll just hit Shift W to get rid of the white background, we can see that our death rate has gone back up to 762 deaths per month compared to 200 something births. We had a death wave with the Economy 2.0 patch, but that was supposed to be over by now. And strangely, our single crematorium, which is operating at 108% efficiency, is showing 0 deceased and a processing speed of 0 bodies per month. Anyway, today we're going to expand eastward to the other side of the incoming highway for some high-density housing in this area, which I think will become our downtown. First, we'll need to move this waste management complex away from the river. Later, we'll move north for some low-density housing and more of a garden city vibe, but that will require us to relocate all this industry I zoned here. After that, we'll get to our university district down here, but that'll have to wait for a future episode. So Notre-Dame des Martyrs has about 16,000 residents, and I'm planning for our downtown to have about twice as many. So I want to start by planning ahead and putting the necessary services and infrastructure in place ahead of time. So that means fire, education, healthcare, and yes, policing. But I'm gonna start by dezoning all of this industrial here and this small coal power plant. We don't really need it anymore, so it's gone. Then I'll bulldoze these roads. What I want to do is simply mirror this waste management complex up here. And I'll start by placing a new landfill and transferring the waste over from the old one so that I can remove it. But as I go to empty the old landfill into the new one, I realize that in Cities Skylines 2, you can just move it without having to empty it. So I'll bulldoze the new landfill and just relocate the old one up here. I'll then move the recycling facility, but that'll create this giant spike in the terrain that I have to smooth out and leave behind this patch of snow, but it'll melt soon enough. And there's a bunch of people standing around outside the landfill. They're all homeless and they're all, except for this one, wealthy. I'll do some detailing around the waste management complex and use Move It to make these turns a little more manageable for heavy vehicles. Now I'll need to find somewhere to place one of these enormous urban elementary schools. And I'll put it here on this boulevard across from the high school. And that thing is huge. I think I'll put mixed-use buildings on either side of it. It does look like it's meant to be a wall-to-wall building. And that should take care of education for now, although we're well over capacity for elementary, so we can just leave this one turned off. Our healthcare capacity is also okay for now. But I'll eventually want to replace this medical clinic with a full-size hospital. And I think I'll put it over here where the police station is now. You know what? I'll just go ahead and make them switch places now. Let's place an urban high school. We can leave it deactivated for now until we need it. It'll fit nicely right here. And I'll place a small bus station on this street, just behind Chemin de la Résistance. I thought I'd have to build a custom bus station since the original one was so big, but thankfully we now have this smaller one. Our unemployment rate has gone up a little bit to 6.4%, but 6.3%, but our death rate is down to 337, so that's good news. But something is wrong. There are just so many unhoused people standing around everywhere. But before we build more housing, I want to make sure that our transit system is up to snuff. I'll start with line 3, which is meant to take workers out to the forestry industry, and I'll extend it out to the mine, which is now our largest employer. That line will now end at our new bus station, as will a new line to the train station. If I can just get them to connect here. And I'll increase the bus fare to $3 to cover the additional expenses, or a bonus for the bus company CEO. Although, in order to supply enough vehicles for all these routes, we'll need to add an extra garage to our bus depot. Here I'm playing around with the Zone Color Changer mod by TDW. It replaces similar functionality in the now defunct Legacy Flavor mod. Isn't Montmaquis pretty in the winter? Although it's weird how the snow accumulates in some places and not others. Alright, it's time to add some housing. I'll start with a combination of mixed-use buildings and high-density housing along the boulevards. I'll use the Find It mod to plop the buildings I like. And I'll use Montmaquis' Asset Variation mod to get the color I want. Hit the left and right arrow keys to cycle through the variations, and move the asset to see the changes. This looks like a good spot for one of the available signature buildings, the Epicurean Garden. Since this is meant to be a downtown, it would be good to have some office buildings, so I'll lower their tax rate to lure them in. Our unemployment rate is up, which doesn't surprise me since we demolished all those industrial buildings, but our death rate is now at a historic high, 825 a month. It looks like all the ambulances at our medical clinic have been dispatched, so we'd better add an ambulance depot for extra vehicles. Maybe that'll help stop people from dying? I'm also going to move the bus station over to make way for a parking lot. No, not that far over. Oops, I think I broke something. A small parking lot? What about an overground parking building? No, that's way too big. What does the underground parking building look like? No, that won't fit either, but I might want to use it somewhere else. With a little help from the Anarchy mod, I can fit a medium parking lot in here. And the net lanes feature in the extra detailing tools mod just makes it so much easier to place fences. And And now our parking lot is properly fenced off. This level 5 mixed-use building on Chemin de la Résistance is beautiful, but I feel like it's facing the wrong way. There, that's better. Alongside the mixed-use buildings, I might place some high-density housing, or even some low-rent buildings like this one, closer to the highway. And once again, we've got a bunch of wealthy, unhoused people standing around here. So here I am playing around with the European high-density housing assets, and once again thinking about using Move It to merge some of them together and make them wall-to-wall buildings. But again, as level 1 buildings, I don't know if this is still going to look good as they level up. So one option is to use the Plop the Growables mod to lock the building levels, but I don't really want to rely on a mod that could really mess up my city if I remove it, or if it stops working. Another option is to use level 5 buildings and make those wall-to-wall, like these level 5 versions of the same high-density housing building. After plopping down a few buildings, I realized I would need to widen some of these roads to accommodate the higher density. Also, I realized that some of the mixed-use buildings that initially spawned along Chemin de la Résistance are a little small, so I'm just going to allow for some larger buildings to be built here. Avenue Commerciale and Avenue Limousin are two of the roads I want to widen, as they serve as vital links between the two sides of town that I imagine were cut off by the highway. But first, I'll just use Move It to nudge some buildings out of the way. Although some buildings will need to be sacrificed for the sake of progress. Here I'll nudge the police station out of the way in order to upgrade this road, but I don't want to upgrade any more than is absolutely necessary, so we'll stop there. And nudge the police station back. I'll fuse a few level 5 buildings, but mostly I'll just place level 1 buildings side by side. They're close enough as it is. It's snowing again in Montmaquis, and here's an example of a couple of level 5 office towers joined together. That looks pretty cool. Before we go any further, I'll just create an additional node in this road in order to shorten one of these ridiculously long bus bays. Doing so after zoning can really mess up your grid. And it looks like the melting snow took my zoning grid with it. I can only see the zoned squares. Let's go back to the zone color changer and see if we can fix this. No, I don't want them black. Let's plop some more office towers, but not all right up against each other. We can put some parks in between. While we're waiting for our downtown hospital, the Notre-Dame Medical Clinic needs another upgrade. Without the Plop the Growables mod, don't forget to properly zone the buildings you've placed so they don't disappear on you. Our death rate just continues to climb. It's at 952 a month. Maybe now would be a good time to put in that hospital? Did you see those little hearts above the Epicurean garden? At least some of our residents are celebrating Valentine's Day by contributing to the birth rate. Here I'll add one of those new parks now available, but it doesn't look quite finished. So I'll add some paths, extend the surfaces, plant some trees and hedges, and that looks better. And that takes us to milestone 12, large city, which gives us a little bit of cash, some expansion permits, some development points, and once again, an increased loan limit. Anyway, here's a little custom plaza I built in the space between two office towers. Hey kid, where are you going? I think this is the first time I've seen anyone run in this game. Oh yeah, here I placed some more of those new parks. But they'll need a little more attention before they look finished. And I'll plant some more trees here between these low rent buildings and the highway. I'm being very deliberate here rather than just throwing a bunch of trees in with the brush. I just want to take a minute here to look at how our bus network is doing. And yeah, that's too many people. That's way too many people waiting at a bus stop. 63 Amity Street. It's too bad the game doesn't update the street names for bus stops. Oh yeah, our train station. That's way too many people. We'll have to do something about that. We'll also have to do something about our death rate, which has now passed 1,000 people a month. I'll move these 3 office towers that I merged together to make room for a hospital. But yeah, that's significantly bigger than I expected. Unfortunately, all these ambulances seem to be held up by a traffic jam. No, the game isn't paused right now. Maybe placing the hospital along such a small road and across from the bus station wasn't a great idea. I'll move it down here and place these office towers back where they were. And I think the time has come to replace this elementary school with the urban elementary school. So it seems the homelessness issue is caused by a bug that was introduced in the recent game updates. I expect it'll be fixed in the fall after the developers come back from summer vacation, but in the meantime, there's this Bye Bye Homeless mod. Credit to WXDAO. Forcing the homeless folks to move out of the city seems just slightly less cruel than deleting them. And I thought about changing the eviction period, but I'd have to restart the game, so let's leave it at 90 minutes for now. We can also evict ghost companies. Hopefully that'll take care of our homelessness issue, but we still have our lots of people dying issue. Our crematorium can handle 50 bodies a month, but we're up over 1,000 now, so we may need a few more of these. And we'll put some on this side of town too, with mixed reactions from the locals. But we're still far from the capacity that we need, so we'd better invest in some upgrades. Wow, just look at all those hearses. Speaking of farewells, I think it's time to say goodbye to this roundabout and have the elevated highway go straight to Chemin de la Résistance. No, that's a little too steep. I'll just create an extra node here so I can pull this back. And that's a little more reasonable. Among the low rent buildings next to the highway, I placed this high school, but the terrain is a little messed up. Oh, it seems I had Anarchy on and forgot to delete this park before plopping the high school down. So just to recap what we've got in our downtown so far in terms of services, There's this high school and multi-purpose park, an urban elementary school here. And demolishing the high school that was here allowed us to connect Avenue Commerciale and leaves us with some space here. Let me know down in the comments what you think we should do with it. Moving east, we've got another urban elementary school, and across from our new park, an urban police station. I guess it looks all right here. This spot here is probably where I'll build a transit hub. Maybe I'll even get started on that in the next episode and replace this small bus station. Then we've got our hospital and a few more of the new parks placed along the river. We then have our third urban elementary school, and I might even need to place a fourth if I can just figure out where. And we also have another urban high school down here. And it looks like this post van has gotten itself into a bit of a pickle. Let's hit play and see what happens. Yeah, okay, that's normal. One last thing I want to do before wrapping up this episode is create a district for our downtown. And there we go. And no, we're not calling it Evergreen Acres. For inspiration, I went back to the city of Grenoble and learned about Saint Hugues, who was made Bishop of Grenoble in the year 1080 and was canonized 2 years after his death. Considering the historic influence of the Catholic Church and the Notre-Dame Cathedral that gave the neighboring district its name, that seems appropriate. At this point, I realized that I should have extended the districts to include Chemin de la Résistance, because there are mixed-use buildings along Chemin de la Résistance and there are people living there who aren't served by any existing district. And I think that'll be it for this episode. We still have a lot of work to do on the St. Hugues district, but I want to thank you very much for watching, and if you enjoyed it, I would invite you to drop a like and a comment below. It would mean a lot to me and it would help out the channel too. So yeah, thanks again. I'm Pylon John. Until next time, Free Palestine.